Hi, this is Podcasters Unleashed, and we're here today just to talk about many subjects. We've got a very interesting subject today. It's called Is Transgender an Agenda? Excuse me. But first we go into that, I'm going to introduce my co-host, starting with Matilda. Over to you,
Hello,
Matilda.
everyone. This is the host of Coffee with Matilda, A Journey to Self. And my podcast is about finding yourself, loving yourself, and coming out of adversity. Over to you, Victor.
Hi, I'm Victor Seo. I'm the host of the Entrepreneurs Podcast, where I interview entrepreneurs from a diaspora that has diaspora background. We talk about strategies to move from the core 9 to 5 to a lifestyle of freedom. So over to you, Hala.
Hello, so I'm the host of the podcast Women Stories, where I share real stories from women across the globe. Tune in for a new episode this week. Over to you, Carla.
And I'm Carla. I'm the host of the Wonder and Wellbeing podcast, which is a podcast where we talk all about education and wellbeing. Back to you, Simon.
Thank you, Carla, and thank you to all my lovely co-hosts. Today, it's going to be it's an interesting one. Personally, I've had a lot of feedback from people regarding this topic about some people are upset, some people are interested, some people are actually sharing their personal experiences, whether they are transgender or they have their children being influenced or however you see it. But I'll just read the introduction and then we'll move on from there. So in recent years, there has been an increase in the number of young people identifying as transgender. I believe we can all relate to that. It looks as this has come out of nowhere in a short period of time. Some people say it has always been an issue and that people are just more comfortable now to say how they feel and to change their gender. Others say it's a craze that has been caused by factors in society, such as the media. Some even say that it is a government agenda, possible. This is an important topic, affecting society, children, and even our education system. I believe we can all agree on that. Many schools around the world are changing the curriculum and the language used to refer to people's gender, which is having huge impacts for teachers and parents. Today, we will discuss the topic to see whether it's an agenda or something else. Now, turning to the audience, we will be throwing questions at you also, as we will do our co-hosts. Feel free to comment in the comment section, and we will put the questions up as and when they're appropriate. But first of all, I shall start off with Matilda. Sorry, Carla. What do you think has led to the increase in transgender in recent years, Carla?
I think there have been a number of things. There's no one thing that's led to it. I think that one of the first things we have to talk about is the issue of the openness with society to talk about certain issues. And that will probably come up as one of the reasons or one of the rationales behind why there are more people identifying as transgender. So there's been a change in the way we communicate, more openness in society. I think also the media does have a role to play in it. I think that it's easier for people to find a community and to find people to support their ideologies and to feel part of a community. And when you feel part of a community, that makes you more inclined to be more confident to come out with certain beliefs or to associate or identify with a certain group or a certain lifestyle. So I think that's also having a factor, particularly amongst teens. And there is some data and things around that. It's not just opinion. I think also there are some elements of the breakdowns in society that have been talked about for many years. So emotional issues, social issues, relationship issues, they're also having an impact. Not all people who identify as transgender have the same experiences. Some people are going through a transition and they're happy with the outcome. Other people go through transition and they're not happy with the outcome. And some of the people that are not happy with the outcome talk about feelings of loneliness, feeling that they don't fit in anywhere. So I think that also has a role to play in it. And probably a few other things that will come up along throughout the conversation, but I'll leave it there for now. Those are some of the main reasons that have come.
Thanks for that, Carla. We've got 2 comments. Do you want to read them out, please?
Yep, we've got Sasha Serge Precarian says, what do you mean by agenda? Do you think there's something deeper than the subject itself behind? And Kishi Chad says, are any people who identify as transgender going to be in the conversation? I think it would be a great opportunity for those who are actually experiencing it to be at the table. And I will answer that, Kishi. We have invited some people. We have reached out to many people and transgender groups and communities to invite them to the show. So they could be somebody who identifies as transgender joining the show tonight, but we don't know. We haven't made anyone come, but we have opened it up if people do want to join.
Okay. And Howla, where Sasha says, do you think there's something deeper than the subject itself behind it? Do you want to answer that? Do you want to respond to that? You're muted, Howla.
Yes. Well, researching on this topic, where I see there is a great motivation, especially in school, to educate children about the transgender identity, even if it's outside the curriculum, even if it's outside the education system for the moment. A lot of teachers, and especially in the USA, they're trying to incorporate books about transgender identity in classroom, and it could be really confusing for these young adults. They are in kindergarten, young adults, to be educated about this topic, because it could lead them to a confusion about their gender and lead them to think about things they were not confused before. And it happened in California, in Rockland Academy in 2018, where a teacher just came up with a book. It's called I'm Jazz, and he was explaining to kids about the transgender identity. I don't understand why we keep putting this kind of ideology into kids' brain at a young age. So I fear it's a political ideological movement. It's not the transgender who are pushing this movement. They are just putting the transgender as an excuse. So I do fear it's an agenda, and it's a political ideological movement.
Thank you for that. Carla, we've got 2 more comments.
Yeah, Kishi says, I cannot imagine that teachers would be able to teach their students about gender expression / identity when sexual health in the USA is horrible. Sasha says, children don't have enough experience in life to decide about anything. They have to wait and to decide later, when they'll decide clearly without any influence. It means to be adult for that.
Okay, thanks. Question for you, Matilda. Does gender diaspora affect girls and boys equally? If not, what is the ratio of boys to girls experience this? And the last bit is, what factors affect the difference in the number of boys versus girls?
Well, first time I'm gonna give a definition of gender dysphoria, so maybe we're all on the same page with the listeners as well. So with the Merriam-Webster and also American Psychiatric Association, it says a distressed state arising from conflict between a person's gender identity and the sex the person has or was identified as having at birth. So it's very interesting because in there is a lot of young boys changing their genders when they're children to female, but when they're teenagers, there is more girls changing their genders to boys. So the trans boys in teenage years is like 1,913, while in trans girls it's 216. Like, it's very big, and the age is at the age of 15. It's huge, and there is a couple of reasons for that. But different countries has been affected differently. for example, in New Zealand, they're seeing a lot of males changing to the female gender, and it's interesting. And the scientists are trying to figure out why. But one of the reasons that there is a lot of female changing their gender at teenager to become males is they're saying because female they realize to be a woman when the breast when they're starting to develop breast, whereas the manhood is mainly with the private part of a man. So that's why boys have more conflict with their private part sooner. That's why they want to be a woman. That's when the conflict starts. But for girls is when they start developing breasts. And also, it's very interesting to realize in lots of societies, especially in Middle East, it's okay for a female to act like a male, but it's really not okay for parents when their boy starts acting like a girl. I have a lot of
Thanks.
other facts. I can go through it maybe
No.
later on when you have time.
Okay, thanks for that. Victor, over to you. Do you think there's an agenda from any professions or governments in relation to this?
Yeah, thank you, Simon. I would want to say to one of the first comments by Kishi that if he has an experience or anyone he knows that is going through this kind of transition should actually inform them to like join the show to inform of some more, to just throw some light into this. But to me, I feel that the introduction of what Hala mentioned in the beginning, the introduction of books like I Am Jazz and other literature for kids in school, to me, I think it needs to be the way it's being rushed, the way it's becoming so mainstream for kids to start, kids at the age of less than 10 talking about different type of sexuality, kids will be kids. They can explore clothes, they can explore colors, but it is for you to, as a parent, to like guide them, not for some books to start programming them. So for me, as a parent, I would say that let kids be kids. If they are exploring to an extreme of colors and clothes that they want to wear, that may be fashion. They might like to dress, they might like to cross dress. Let them be. But to actually start giving them those after reading one or two books or watching this TV show or this comic, they start telling you, oh, I feel I am this, I feel I'm that, I feel I'm this. We all are adults here. We know about feelings. The feeling I had when I was 15, the feeling I had when I was 2 is not the feeling I had right now. So kids, let kids be kids. When you're an adult, yeah, let whatever happens, whatever decision you want to make, go ahead and make that decision. But do not start programming primary school children. Do not start programming secondary school children. To me, I think that should be off the table. So for shoving this down into the school curriculum for 6 years, you've been telling them, hey. When they come out after 6 years, they go into the next batch, B. Now there's so much confusion everywhere when it comes to gender. See, my own is the agenda should maintain with the adults, not with the kids. That is where I draw my own line. Go ahead, Matilda. I see you're jumping to say something.
Thank you. Before we have Matilda, there's some comments come in. Carla, please. Carla, we can't hear you.
Excuse me. Kisi Chad says, transgender people have always existed and been around. They just have not had the visibility or support.
And he also commented before that one. Yeah.
While children may not be old enough to legally make decisions for themselves that are lifelong, we cannot dismiss how the child feels. They are still a human and should be allowed to discover / explore. And Anders says there's a lot of interest working against this group, different religious groups, conservative gender-based groups, and so on. Has a lot of similarities with how gay people were treated not so long ago. And he follows that up by saying, I don't believe this is something that people should choose lightly since it's connected to stigma, bullying, and so on.
Okay.
And I totally agree with that. See, Simon, just 1 second. Because a child wants to put their hand on a flame of fire does not mean you shouldn't stop them. Because the flame looks very beautiful, they still want to put their hands in. They feel they like, they want to, but you need to stop them not to get themselves burnt. But as an adult, if you want to put your whole arm into a furnace, go ahead, it is yours.
Okay.
My
Matilda?
Yeah. So I'm gonna jump in, and I wish in our table we had a transgender, so we could have understand their feeling as well. I wanna urge everyone in this group and whoever is listening, the people who are transgender, it's not like they wake up one day and say, "Whoopsie, today I'm transgender." The decision is such a confusing, such a long process for a child. Even have you seen a transgender child? I'm not saying they have to do the surgery, but you have to understand the feeling that they go through it. Since some of them, even as early as age 2, they realize the body that they're in, it's a problem. They don't like it, and they want to be the other side. There were lots of studies of transgender children that they were painting themselves as the other gender, and these are 3, and nobody's talking about anything with them, but they feel it. And if it's not addressed in a right way, we're going to have a very serious problems later on with these people. I'm not saying that we need to advertise surgery, because maybe it has to be hold it till they're older, but maybe we need to address it. Like Carla was mentioning about that teacher, maybe this teacher was bringing this book to show people, to show these children tolerance. The same thing that I want to teach my child in a young age, that different colors are okay, different religions are okay. Being woman is okay. It's the same as a boy. You teach them at a young age. You don't keep it at the age of 18 and say, okay, yalla, now it's okay. You want to change the mentality of people.
Calm down.
You change it
I am
from the
not
young
saying, Matilda,
age.
I'm
But
not
I'm
saying
talking,
that
Victor.
I'm not saying that being whoever you want to be is not okay. When you're an adult, make that decision. But as a child, it is not okay to start
But how can you tell your
programming
child?
them.
How can you tell your child it's not okay what you feel? It's not okay what you feel, and it's
My
not
child wants to
proper what
vote.
you
My
feel.
child wants to vote. Do I say, oh, you really feel strongly about voting this guy? Go and
No,
vote. Is
Victor,
it good?
you need to talk
Matilda,
with that
can I?
transgender and to understand the feeling that they're going. Lots of them, they're suicide. You know, Victor, in countries like Iran, we don't talk
I
about
totally
transgender.
agree.
Okay, we in countries like Iran or Armenia, we don't talk about transgender. You guys have a Western problem. Let me talk to you about Eastern problems. We don't have these kind of things. And even there are fathers that they beat their child, their son, till the death, because their son, their boy, is not acting like the other boys. So they rather have a dead child than a transgender child or a
Matilda, can
gay
I just
child.
add something?
So
Before we jump in there, guys,
talking
there's
about
a
this
comment.
topic is
Matilda,
not a bad thing.
there's comments.
Matilda, can I
children.
just add something, Simon, please? We
All
need
right.
to recognize the difference between the gender identity disorder and CDSD, the sexual disorder genitals in young adults, because the gender identity disorder is where the person feels they were born in the wrong gender. Okay, and you have the other thing is the disorder of sex development, or the development of one or more component of anatomical or chromosome is of the sex is unusual. So there are differences in how we can treat a child when there is something like that happened.
Okay, Carla, can you read out the comments, please?
Okay, so Anders, where were we? We're up to Anders, and Anders says, Just like being gay, I think it's a part of every population that feels like this. When it comes to the transgender group, I believe it's pretty small. And Masmaya Cargo, my question is, what is the opinion of the monotheistic religions in this matter? And also is that the same?
The same.
Okay, the same question. Okay. All right, back to you, Simon.
Do you want
Can
to
I just
answer
say,
that?
I just wanted to just pick up on something that Matilda said about something very early on when she mentioned about the feelings of people throughout their life. I think it's really important to discuss that, because there is a lot of discussion. As we know, this is a very controversial topic. It's being discussed widely. And as a parent, I was recommended this book called Irreversible Damage by Abigail Schreier. And Abigail Schreier has done her own research. She's a writer, journalist, and she has spoken to many parents face to face. She's also spoken to many transgenders. And she has written quite a good book. We can put the description of the book and the details of it. She has used multiple sources from all different backgrounds, including information collected from these students. And in one of the chapters, she talks about these, what we call clusters of cases. And I know as a group, we were watching a video earlier today that talked about this, where there are some children, and she interviews them personally, their stories are recorded in this book, as well as the stories of their parents, where the child has presented to a psychologist or a specialist and said that they've been feeling like this all their life. But their parents have countered that and said that they have seen no evidence of this in their child throughout their childhood, until they got to the age that Matilda mentioned earlier, around the age of 15, when their bodies were changing and they were going through what's a natural part of teenage girl development, in fact, all people's development, to feel uncomfortable in their body. And what had happened is there were some genuine cases where they said that the parents had said, absolutely, my child was like this from a young age, before any kind of teenage change or any influence from somewhere else. But then there were these other large numbers of teenagers that were presenting in a cluster in one school. And that is not consistent with the notion that these children felt like this from a young age. And in this book, Abigail Schreier argues that some of this is to do with social media and the influence of social media, and also the teenage girl mentality to cluster together in groups and to look for people that you can identify with. And she mentions it as a contagion. It's almost like something that spreads between them as a culture. And when you have that phenomena where you have clusters of girls all in one school, all identifying as transgender, that counters the idea that these children all felt like that from a young age. It just doesn't align with that theory. So I think we have to be careful with saying that that all of transgenders all felt like that from a young age, because that's not true. That's not what the research is showing. It's not what the data is showing, or the wider analysis of the subject. So I just wanted to point that out.
We've got comments. Sorry, Carla, we've got comments coming through. Can we get jump on these?
Frederick says, as per children are concerned, how about keeping childhoods non-sexualized? Part of the problem is exposure to social media, plus some teachers that want to expose young minds to things they do not yet understand. Sasha says, a few international think tanks are pushing for the recognizance of different minorities. It's a new trend in Western countries. It seems a subject deeper than just to recognize a specific group. Kishi Child says, not discussing sex, sexuality, sexual orientation, and gender identity is detrimental to children. And Anders says, I believe that it's important to meet this group with empathy and understanding. There's still preachers and other people that think that you can convert gay people through exorcism or prayers. And I think we do need to point out here that while some of these points about gay are valid, we are not discussing gay on the show. That would be a topic for another show. And I think that we do an injustice to transgender people when we try to discuss the issues that affect them alongside the issues that affect gay or homosexual. And I think sexuality, the choice of who you have sexual relationships with, is very different from the transgender issue. So thank you for your comment, Anders, but we won't be discussing homosexuality in the same discussion.
Based on what some of these comments have come out, I've just got a spare of a moment question that I'm going to throw out to you as the co-host. And what it is, this whole transgender thing and actually going through surgery is a real major decision to decide that you want to cut off a part of your anatomy if you're a man. How do you feel about what would be an age limit or a suitable age limit for children or people, I should say, before they could actually make that conscious decision, considering the decision making part of the brain doesn't fully develop until the age of 25? And you're going to have a rush of different hormones throughout your upbringing in life. What would you say to that, any of you? All right, Howler.
I cannot decide in what age. I'm not a doctor, or I'm not a physicist or an expert in this, but I feel if an adult wants to go through this and they feel that they are in the wrong body, that's not my business. It's their business. And if they want to self-identify as a sex different than their body, it's their business, and good luck to them. A, it's their right to do that, and B, it's not my business. But it's not what it's about. The real agenda, it kicks in when they say, well, we should not discriminate transgender. Of course, we should not discriminate. We should not discriminate anyone. But when the agenda starts, it starts to say, well, you should not call them like this. You should not do that. You should not express your opinion. You should not talk about them like that. That's when your freedom of speech is reduced. And that's what the agenda wants us to do. It's like, don't talk about this topic at all.
Okay, thanks for that. Carla, we've got more comments coming in. Then we're going to go to Matilda with her short, brief comment, and then we'll be in Victor.
Okay, so Sasha says a few international think tanks are pushing for the recognizance of different. We have that. Sorry, excuse me. Where are we?
Gay, yeah, that one.
Yeah, gay is sexual orientation. Transgender is gender identity. And Anders says, I just gave an example on how people can be treated because of their orientation. Thank you, Anders. And not every trans person wants to do surgery, says Kishi Chad. Sasha again says, do you see a relation between an agenda with genders, vaccines, and transhumanism? Good question, Sasha. And Kishi Chad says, everyone has freedom of speech, but opinions do have consequences. Alma Smaya, Cargo, as I know that the Islamic religion permitted sexual transformation in only 2 cases. And I hope that doctors and scientists can be the ones that own this question. If religious or conservative groups take the lead, it can be a lot of pain and misery, from Anders Cardell. We'll come back to that one afterwards.
That was a very interesting one, because religion sets the precedence for a lot of the laws. Regardless of what,
but also, can I just cut in and say on that, because we did have a question about that, to say, I believe that the reason why we have such an issue getting to grips with what this is really about is because we try to talk about it away from religion, because isn't it ironic that we are happy to talk about surgery, we're happy to talk about sexuality, we're happy to talk about people's body parts with such an openness nowadays, but we're not happy to talk about religion. Religion has become the taboo subject, and I think that's incredibly ironic. And what's funny is we cannot talk about this subject without talking about core values. We can't talk about this subject without talking about religion, and we can't bring it up without the G word, without saying about God, because that's actually the bad word nowadays, isn't it? If you say God, that's the swear word. And that is ridiculous. And I think that we have to be very careful when we're trying to talk about this without talking about core values, because before you answer questions or discuss topics related to human beings, you have to answer the core questions of your beliefs. What are your beliefs? Because that will decide a lot on things like how you raise your children, what you want your children to be raised to believe in schools, how you want your children to treat other human beings. When we're talking about justice and we're talking about equality and kindness and love to your fellow human being, that's something you should be doing anyway, regardless of whether they're transgender, homosexual, straight, whatever. It's a no-brainer. You should be doing that. But the question we have to answer is, what are our beliefs? Do you believe in God? And if you do believe in God, does that determine how you act? Should it determine how you act? And if you don't believe in God, what do you believe in? And how should that belief govern what you do and how you act? That's a very important question. And if we try and dance around it, that society has got so advanced that we don't talk about God or religion anymore, I think that we're making a major mistake there. I think we do have to throw that out there.
All right, thank you a lot for that, Carla. Matilda, this is a quick one because we've got a lot of comments just flagging up.
Yeah, I just
what my question
say,
is, sorry, Matilda, what my question is to you is, you have transgender friends. Did you know them
Yes.
before they had their transition? And what was the circumstances? Can you just enlighten us?
Yeah, I know one transgender woman in New York that she's a very successful makeup artist now for like top magazines, and her story is fascinating. She
When you
was
say
he.
she's a woman, was she a man before?
No, yeah, she was
Okay,
he when
right.
she was a boy, and the father was like beating him all the time, and the school kids were always bullying him, and he was to a point that he was like, either I'm gonna die or I will run away. So he managed to run away at the age of 15 from Iran. He went to Thailand. He did the surgery. Now it's she, and she survived. She doesn't talk with her family at all anymore. But if I want to share a message, if people will be more understanding and have more compassion towards these people, to understand what they're going through, and we should teach them to the children the same way that we're teaching children that all the colors are okay, all the religion is okay, women and men are the same. We're teaching them from a young age. You cannot not teach anything at that age of 18, say, okay, now you have to love everyone. No, it starts from a school system. And if we can do that, we can have more loving society. And some of them, we need to mention that transgender doesn't mean they done the surgery. Transgender is just they identify themselves with the other opposite sex. Transsexual is the one that done the surgery. Some of the transgender wouldn't do the surgery if the society was more understanding and more loving towards them. These people can't even find jobs.
Okay, we're gonna do
in
some.
Western societies.
Thank you, Matilda. Carla, can you jump on these comments, please?
Yes. Okay. So Almasma, the first case of a person was originally created male or female, but his organs are not visible, then it is permissible to perform a surgical operation to expose those organs. So I think that goes back to what you were saying, Howler, earlier, when you were saying that when a person is born and may need a surgery to help them in certain situations is very different. And Kishi Chad, religion has unfortunately caused a lot of oppression and pain. This is why many are turning to spirituality instead. And Al-Masmia, and to give the person medications or hormones to strengthen the original nature with which God created him. I suppose that goes back to whether or not you believe in God, which I said earlier. I'm not saying all religious groups. I'm talking about the same groups that call themselves Christians and saw Black people as inferior. Anders Cardell brings out there about the extremities that religion can sometimes go to. And Anders, Christians that consider Trump to be Jesus. Another extreme viewpoint.
Okay. Victor, what factors in society do you think contribute to young people experience gender diaspora? I'm probably not saying it right. Victor, noise, sound, please.
Yeah, gender dysphoria. Simon, see, I would say it has been mentioned time and time again that it is because as humans we tend to what I find is level. So as humans we tend to the most magnetic emotion for humans is pain. So we tend to go together where we find comfort for our pain. So, and even for our passion as well. So with the advent of technology, social media, our ability to connect more, we can take Facebook for example. Any type of group, any type of feeling that you have, there's a group for that. See, I'm feeling one toes up today. Just Google it or put it on Facebook, search it. You must see 2-3 people who are feeling the same way, and you start having a conversation about that. See, the agenda is so subliminal that it is coming right under us. That before you know it, even your kids at home will start challenging you about what is going on. To me, it is set. It is assigned from birth. It is assigned from birth. But if as time goes on, you want to say, okay, no, I think you should be of a consenting age to make that decision. That is what I'm trying to make Matilda to understand. You can be feeling this, you can be feeling that. But when you get to the consenting age, I have no problem with that. In short, it's not a problem. It is, I wish you all the best. It's so, I won't say it's unfortunate I don't have friends who is going through, or who has already been. No, I won't say it's unfortunate. I'm open to having those kind of, but I would want to learn to know why. But for kids, see, this conversation today is all about kids. We're not talking about the adults here. We're talking about how do we draw the lines? What is the agenda towards kids? So I would say that allow kids to be kids, Simon. Every other thing else is a given. But allow kids to be kids, let them explore, let them play. See, if it's non-sexuality, let them be. But when they get to that age of consent where they can make decisions for themselves, then it's all good.
Okay, thanks a lot, that Carla. We've got some comments, a couple more comments, and then we'll be over to Howler.
Yeah, we've got Kishi Chad is helping you out there with the pronunciation of dysphoria.
Yeah, I saw that.
Dysphoria.
Yeah.
And Nelson is saying, how is this done? How is this done? Okay, back to you.
Howler, what has been the increase in transgender had on schools? What's the impact has the increase on transgenders had in schools?
First of all, because I was searching for the topic, and I have seen a lot of teachers, they are trying to incorporate these thoughts on young kids, and a lot of them, a lot of kids, they have been traumatized. They have been traumatized, confused, and they have been asking questions that they were not asking about it before. And now parents are dealing with this problem, that they need to also educate themselves about this kind of topics. And I do think that parents are the first educators on these controversial topics, and not the teachers. And as the education system, they need to respect the journey and the development of the child. It's very confusing for them at a young age, because they ask a lot of questions: how they were born, where they are really, what they are really. They are really questioning themselves, and they are talking about this question to their parents. So I think children's journey and development and identity should be respected, and the only one that they need to seek education and they need to educate their children are parents, and not the education system.
See, and if I should jump in there, see, as a parent, I would, if, for example, any of my child comes with this kind of this conversation, if I see that it is really something that she or he needs to actually explore some more, I would seek help with my consent. I would seek help, but do not in the classroom you swerve and you just go ahead and start talking to my child without me being present of my consent, and before you know it, it has somersaulted into into those started taking pills to block this, to block that, to block. No, I wouldn't. So first line of education, thank you, Hala, is the parent. And then the teachers have too much to do than to like put the burden of raising kids again. So that is what I would just add.
Thanks a lot for that, Victor. Carla, can you read out some of these comments, please?
Yeah, we have movie advice for Simon, Boys Don't Cry. That's from Anders. And we have, hi everyone, my comment was directed to Kishi Chad from Nelson, because Nelson asked the question, how is this done? So Nelson is asking, Kishi Chad, how is teaching sexuality, gender identity to children? And Frederick Villalobos says 100% agree.
I believe that's in relation to what Howler said.
Yeah. And Kishi Chad says, while I do believe in centering and prioritizing the happiness and well-being of a child, I also acknowledge how difficult a position it must be for a parent to have a child who expresses that they are transgender. It challenges a lot of social constructs and norms. Many parents are not experienced, exposed, or educated with this. And Victor Anders says, Victor, you're a kind father.
Okay. So Matilda, a question for you. Consider you're quite a newlywed, and I assume you'll be having children, starting a family soon. Would you be happy to give your child or the school to give your child blockers for their sexuality development? And if they decided that they wanted to be the opposite sex, would you be okay with surgery or anything along those lines?
Listen, I'll be devastated. As a parent, I'll be devastated if my child comes to me and say I'm transgender, or I'm gay even, for God's sake. And even different religion, that, a problematic religion. Why? Because I love my child and I don't want my child to have a difficult life. And any other that is not norm, it's going to be a difficult life for my child. So I will be devastated. But then at the same time, how I can support my child that if really this is what he's going through, or she's going through, I have to make this journey as easy as possible for that child. But no, do I rather to have a straight child or a gay child? Fuck yeah, straight child. Or a transgender or a normal child, I would have. But then maybe we're constantly talking about transgender and why they're this and but why we're not talking about why this happens? Maybe something in hormones when the mother is pregnant, it's happening. I mean, there are doctors, they're talking about it. Maybe these pregnancy pills that the doctors are giving to women, this is one of the causes. So why don't we just look at the issues that create this kind of a situation for people? Because it's not a trend.
I agree with that, Matilda. I think that a lot of the discussion often tries to skip over the why. And a lot of the discussion brings out the issues of injustice and suffering and pain without really digging to the root causes of what causes human beings to have these deep, deep feelings of pain. Because you rightfully pointed out before that this is not when a person, we're not talking about teenagers or children here who we know, as we've discussed, and as Abigail Schreier points out in her book, teenagers can be a little bit unreliable as a source. So let's talk about transgender adults. Transgender adults, a lot of them have been through many, many years of pain. When we've heard their stories, they've had lots of discomfort, lots of not only suffering when they felt like they're in the wrong body, but then also all of the suffering that comes from going through the transition, not just the social stigma, the rejection, the changing of their identity. And I think this is what we see in the battling in society, even for the pronouns and all of that. It's to try and acknowledge that journey that they've been on and how painful that's been from a social point of view. But then on top of that, there's also all the physical pain, sometimes a lifetime of physical pain. It's not that they transition and then they're suddenly having a wonderful life. No, they're having lots of physical pain associated with that as well. And so they put themselves through that physical pain in an attempt to remedy another pain. And we have to really get to the bottom of what's causing people to feel that deep, deep pain. And that's why I said earlier, I really believe it goes back to answering the core fundamental questions about human existence. Where are we? What are we? Where do we come from? And where are we going? Those are the philosophical questions that I don't know if society has become too advanced to answer those or to even ask them anymore, but they still matter. And pain is very closely associated with those questions, the core questions of identity. When we're talking about identity, that's a fundamental question of human being, isn't it?
Thanks a lot for that, Carla. Sorry about there was emergency. I had to blank the screen there for a minute. Can you read out the comments? We've got a lot of comments in those in that short period of time. Apologies for that.
Okay. All right. So we have, the problem is you don't bring it up in school. It's going to be hell for the people that feel like that, says Anders. Anders, it's like it's been for gay youth with bullying, social stigma, high suicide rates, and so on. And also being Jewish is bad if you live in a Nazi society. And Frederick says, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, adult transgenders and their expectation that the society has to cater for their needs. If I identify as a woman, I go into a woman's bathroom, or I decide I will compete in female sports with my male anatomy. And Kishi, Chad, there are many issues that are bigger than trans people competing in sport, like how trans women are being murdered worldwide, or how transphobia has a lot of sexism and misogyny behind it. Back to you, Simon, to deal with those social.
You know what? Obviously, I'm not going to put my own personal point of view, but I think what Frederick's brought up about sports is really important. And there's also another question that there's two questions here. One is, if you're transgender, whether you've had the chop or not, is it okay for you to go into a women's bathroom and use a women's changing room? As women in the show, I could put it out to you and to the women in the audience. Would you feel comfortable with that? And the other thing is, for the sports side, is if just because you chop off a part of your anatomy, does it give you the right to compete in female combat sports, where you've got the physical advantage? Average male has 60% upper body strength than a woman. And there was a classic case where there's a woman MMA fighter, and she said, basically, I was just fighting this man, because regardless of whether he's a transgender or not, that punch, I've been punched many a time, but I've never felt a punch like that before in my life. So I would say to you ladies in the audience out there, what are your comments when it comes to that? Because if these people are really female, like they say they are, why are other women not happy with it? So Matilda, I'll throw that to you. Would you be comfortable having a transgender changing next to you, and you know that was really a man? It's got a man's mind, let's say, or however you work it. I can't get too technical, but would you feel happy changing in the changing room, and you know you're going to get butt naked and he's next to you?
Listen, a transgender man, I'm sorry, and if they don't do surgery as well, you have to understand how they think. They really think they're a woman.
That's not.
So,
we're not talking.
Yes,
we're not talking about how they think.
I wouldn't
We're
mind.
not talking about how they
I
think. We're
wouldn't
talking about
mind
how you
if
would
they
see
are.
it.
Oh, I wouldn't mind. Why should I
Okay.
mind? First of all, I'm not naked in the bathroom, and second of all,
no, we're talking the changing room. I'll give you a scenario. You work out. I don't know if you go to the gym. You're going to have your shower. You're going to change.
they've done transsexual.
Yeah,
Are they
no,
transsexual?
No. You're Matilda, a transgender.
Yes,
Victor's had the chop. He's a transgender. He's coming into the room now to change.
but has he done the surgery?
Yes,
That's what
he
I'm
has.
saying.
But
Okay, then no, she's a woman.
So you're okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, ladies, Carla, how do you feel about that?
I will begin first. I will not be okay with that. Imagine if I'm in the airport and there is a police transgender who needs to search and touch my body to see if I'm holding something. Of course, I won't be comfortable with a transgender police trying to touch touch me to search for something. I won't like it, and I don't like it. I don't want to be put in that situation.
Okay.
Okay, Carla.
Carla?
Okay. All right. So I'm going to confess that I'm a prude. So personally, I would change in the most private part of a changing room anyway, even in front of women, because that's how I was brought up. And I'm not afraid to say that. But in answer to your question, Simon, I would not be comfortable because I really do believe my core beliefs are quite strong. I believe in God, and I believe in God's right to decide how human beings live. And I know that that's a big topic for another subject, another episode, so I won't go there. But I believe that a male is a male and a female is a female by genetics. And I believe when you have a surgery, you don't actually change your gender. You may change the way you feel, and you may change the way you present yourself or the way you identify. But I wouldn't be comfortable. However, I also believe in being compassionate and being respectful to all human beings, regardless, in as far as you can. And so I would probably just remove myself from that situation. I would avoid it anyway by changing in a private place, but I wouldn't be comfortable. But I also would not want to make that person feel uncomfortable, because I don't believe that's my place to do that. And they probably already do. From what we've heard from their stories, they already feel uncomfortable enough. So I wouldn't justify adding to their discomfort in any way either.
Okay. Before we go back to the comments, I was just going to ask Victor, if I don't know how this works, but if a woman, bear with me, Matilda, if a woman decided she's a man and went into the male changing room, would you have an issue?
That's what's going to happen in the changing room.
Okay. I don't know how
what about a gay guy? It's in a changing room.
We're not
what
talking about Matilda. We're not talking about gays.
It's the same thing.
No, we're not talking about gays today.
It's not the same thing.
That's another
but
show.
I'm sorry,
Matilda,
having a lesbian in the locker room is more dangerous for me than a transgender woman. Excuse me.
Okay, that's another show, Matilda. Thank you. So if you go over
but
to the comments,
it is related to us right now.
If
You
you go over
asked me,
to the comments,
Simon,
please.
you asked me if transgender is.
If you go over to the comments, please, Carla. Thank you.
Okay, so Anders says, why I use gay as an example is because there was a lot of interest before saying don't promote this, like liberal views made people gay. Okay, interesting comment there from Anders. I think we get overlap between gay and transsexual. And Kishi says, the chop is really not a good idea to bring up, tread lightly. I don't think he'll actually use of that terminology there. Simon and Anders Cardell, the questions you bring up, Simon, has to be discussed in a way where you reach some sort of consensus. And Kishi Chad, also be aware that misgendering someone can create a lot of tension, and that is why a lot of trans people do not want to participate in discussion like that. I agree, it's very, very, very difficult to find somebody. We did try to find somebody, but it was a challenge. Frederick says, I have 2 children, both female. One is 5 and the other is 1.5 years old. If the current trend continues, why would they ever be interested in sports? If a male suddenly decides that he identifies as a woman and competes against them, interesting. Beckles says, a lesbian can be in a changing room and women do not know. Very true. That's why I'm a prude. Nelson says, Carla Madden in Palmer makes a very good point. You cannot change your DNA. And Sasha says, it's for me something not fair about competition in high-level sport. The example in weightlifting with the New Zealand transgender is just a nonsense at that level of competition. Back to you, Simon. Lots of comments.
You see some years ago, an African girl was banned from
I remember this.
from the sprint because her testosterone level was too high.
Yeah,
now all of a sudden it's okay.
Yeah.
For
that's always the way, Victor. Okay,
Victor,
I've got a question for you, Victor. What role do psychologists and experts such as doctors play in this? Do we need to be more careful about letting experts decide what we believe and allow in society?
Yeah, like I said before, parents should be first line of defense. And if it's gone beyond the scope, they should allow the psychologists to come in and the doctors and the experts to come in. Why? Because they've tested multi-range, they've tested a whole lot of they've spoken to a lot of people with the same or um, similar emotions or similar experience. So I would say they should allow parents. I know we as parents, we, because of our emotional attachment, we have this conception in our heart even before we were born. We say, oh, I want a boy, I want a girl. Oh, when the girl comes, oh, I want the girl to be like this. I have dreams, I have hopes, I have aspiration for her. If she fulfills it, great. And all of a sudden she just shifted and said, no, I no longer want to be like this. I want to be like this. So you start to like, that is a new territory. That is a different playing field entirely. So that is where you need to start having a conversation first. And when it starts progressing, you see that, okay, at 15 still going, 16 is still going. You don't stop, you just keep talking. 18, okay, man, this is now, I hand over you to the hands of the expert. Then if she wants to continue that, I think it is fair to allow parents to have the first talk before they start like interjecting on a school or a primary school level.
So is it you're saying that the government's taking too much responsibility for raising all the children?
Yeah, from the
Okay.
parents.
Okay.
Because in me being from Nigeria, we have more say as parents.
Okay,
So it's not more about the social contract that is happening in the West, whereby the parents and the government are doing things at 60 or 70-30. The government 70% and the parents 30%. So, but where I come from my background, in the past 1,000, 2,000 years, it has been this way. Parents, not just parents, but the village, like, kind of move the child forward.
All right, thanks a lot. We got another comment, and then we're going to be over to Matilda with a question. Carla?
Yeah, Anders says the sport thing that we mentioned earlier can be regulated through different rules. And Nelson says, well, there are experts and then there are experts to promote a viewpoint. Are we talking real science or pseudoscience? And also Nelson poses a question for the host and audience. Do you feel that children's childhood experiences are being shortchanged by bringing them too early into adult type of topics?
Okay. Howla, do you want to answer that question before we go?
Keep it to Carla, I think. I'll pass it to Carla. She's the teacher.
No, let's give it to Matilda.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Well, Matilda, the question is for you. What are the solutions or ways forward for this from your own life perspective?
I think it's good to talk about this kind of topics young age. Not necessarily doing the surgery. I'm against surgery in any form, in general, for adults as well. But I want to make sure one point that it was mentioned, and for me was like fascinating. In 2011, there was 4,830 breast augmentation surgeries were done in teenage girls lower than 17 years old in America. Isn't that fascinating that we allow this kind of changes? Kim Kardashian style. Again, I come back to Kim Kardashian in our societies, and which I'm against of it as well. For me, it would be like to talk about it in a way from a young age to have a more acceptance in the society. We need to teach them in a young age. We cannot let when they're older and then say, oh, it's okay to be gay, it's okay to be transgender, or it's okay to have transgender people around you. They don't have disease. Because society is treating them very badly, and we need to teach our young children to have the acceptance. The way that we're teaching them different colors is okay, different religion is okay. I mean, being a boy and a girl is the same. So yeah, we need to teach them young age, and maybe having a gender, non-binary gender identification. It's okay for people. Maybe these children can associate with them associate themselves with that for a while till they figure out what they want.
Okay. Can I just a little statistics thing here? Can you raise your hand, and also the guys in the audience, if you know any transgenders? I personally don't know any transgenders. Has any of you as a host know any transgenders? Okay, so it's two out of 5. Okay, reason why I ask this is because some people may say that they're getting too much priority in comparison to other things, social issues that we have, from youth violence, drugs, family breakdowns, lots and lots of different things. So I agree, it's very important, but some people may stress that as well, based on the statistics today in that respect. So moving on to, we've got some more comments. Can you read out the comments, please, Carla, please?
Yeah, we have this comment from Anders Cardell. Anders says, I believe it's very important to let scientists and doctors take the lead better than voodoo. Anders, I know that you're a father, and I highly, highly recommend Abigail Schreier's book. There's a very interesting account in there of what she says happens to a very effective doctor and what happens to her research as a result of this discussion. I think you'd find it fascinating. And Frederick Villalobos says, absolutely, it is one of my main concerns with schools and social media. Anders says, when it comes to their ethic framework, it should, of course, be a broader discussion, not limited to only doctors and scientists. Kishi Chad says, there is never a right or wrong time to education children on adult topics. It is all relative, and there are levels in which you can educate yourself and then have discussions with your child. Not every parent is capable of providing their child with basic necessities, and not every child is incapable of comprehending mature topics. Nelson says, but Matilda, that is totally different conversation to automatically talk about acceptance before talking about the implications. Decisions and even poor decisions have consequences. Anders says, Thailand seems to be a country that are pretty cool with transgender. Nelson, I know several transgenders. Frederick, social media, the internet plays a huge role as how kids are exposed to some of these topics. Parental responsibility. I also know several transgenders, including one family member. And Kishi Chad, I have a trans cousin, co-workers, friends, and exes. Back to you, Simon.
Okay. Thank you. Howla, how does this situation sit with your values as a future parent? Are you concerned?
Actually, I feel empathy for parents right now, because they are really in a challenging time. Because now, if you are a parent and you don't like what's been taught to your kids in school, then you are automatically labeled as anti-transphobics. And the whole thing just starts to expand from the initial discussion topic about we must not discriminate transgender. And also now for girls, like we have discussed, girls that don't like transgender in the bathroom, they will labeled as anti-transphobic, and also the feminists, they are not with the transgender. So now what I'm concerned about is we are trying to divide each other into different groups, and we fight each other, and we don't see what is really happening. And I think Carla, she has mentioned about your self-identity, because every time you subdivide and you divide, you are away from your self-identity, and you're getting really far away from your true self and what you really are in the first place. So I think the whole division and the whole subdivisions make things complicated and make people divided, and we are not really seeing what's really happening. We're just seeing from the telescope. We are not really seeing what's really happening.
Okay, thanks a lot. Carla, question. What does the role the media influencers play?
Well, they play a huge role, and the media is a very big, isn't it? So when we're saying the media, we need to know what we're talking about. So the mainstream media at the moment in a lot of countries, I'll speak here from in the UK, the mainstream media, we were watching a few videos earlier where we as a group to prepare. There is a certain segment of the mainstream media that seems intent on pushing a certain narrative, and it's quite a narrow narrative. And it's a narrow narrative that is doing not only an injustice to people that might have strong opinions against transgender as a philosophy, but it's also doing a disservice to people who are affected by this. It does a disservice to parents whose children are affected, because it points to certain things and creates them as a generalization, like I said earlier, such as all transgenders have felt uncomfortable in their body from a very young age, which is not true. If you look at the individual cases, that's not true. And that transgenders, when they have changed their identity and things like that, that their life gets better, which is also not true. And so that narrative is quite dangerous. And some segments of the mainstream media are portraying that. There is also another part worth mentioning with regard to media, which is the social media, which are certain platforms that have large followings, particularly amongst teenagers, that do not regulate what is being posted there and have no responsibility over what's posted there. And teenagers use those platforms as places to get advice, to get support, to get recommendations, and things like that, which is not the right place for them to get that from, even if they are transgender and there is genuine and they have a need for proper support from their parents, from specialists without an agenda. They shouldn't be getting their advice and their information from social media platforms. And that's dangerous. And again, I'm going to say Abigail Schreier's book, because it covers so many different things. She does have a chapter where she talks about social media influencers and the role of some of the popular transgenders on YouTube and various platforms, and how they are influencing. And there was one particular case where a famous transgender had sent an item through the mail to a young child, an underage teen, to help them on their journey without their parents' responsibility. And that's the kind of thing that can sometimes be happening through social media that isn't necessarily ethical. And that's not about whether you agree or disagree. It's about the ethics of who should be responsible for children of a certain age, and helping them to get help, even if they are going to get help to have surgery. Whose responsibility is that? Is it a social media influencer that should do that, or is it their parents?
Okay, thanks a lot. We're going to read the last comment, and then we're going to just close up. And I just want to hear a clip, 2-minute segment from everybody, of the host, about how you foresee yourself moving forward with the whole transgender community, and bringing up your children if you have them, and along those lines. So over to you, Carl.
Kishi Chad says there is a difference between someone who is unaware of the transgender experience, and there are some people who are inherently and undeniably transphobic. Also, let us just take a moment to acknowledge the privilege that we all have of identity with the gender that we are assigned to at birth. Being trans does not look or seem easy, and I have a lot of empathy and compassion for them. That's a very good comment.
Yeah, Kishi, you know, I like your name because it means money in some parts of where I come from. So Kishi. Yeah, I like that. See, my own in the build up to this topic, or the build up to having this conversation, the fear of having some misconception regards how we are going to like have this discussion is that it's kind of twofold. Either you are for or you are against. There are people like us who I'm a core African traditional man. I'm living in the Western society, so I see how things go like that. So it kind of like, oh, okay, calm down. Where is this one going? So some of us who wants to like understand, are they really, really going forward with this, or there are some things that we are not seeing? And for people like us who are really like suspicious, who wants to like ask more questions, I think it will be a disservice to people like me who wants to kind of see where this trend is going. Is it an agenda? Allow natural evolution to take place. If it's not, I am brought up with the sense of there's two assignments, male and female. That's it for me. Now you're bringing I just researching this topic and I now understand what it's called a spectrum. So it will be a great conversation to have with someone who is actually going through or who has gone through to like come and educate me.
Okay, thanks a lot for that, Victor. Now, what I want you guys to comment on is this. There's been a lot of debates where you can see on YouTube, on social media, where people refuse to identify somebody as their transgender. Mainly, let's say, where it's been a man, he says he's a woman because he cannot have children, he doesn't have a time of the month and all these kind of things. How do you feel about that and why? And then we'll move on to closing out after that. So we'll start with Howler.
Well, I think it's confusing people. It's like your question is how we can name transgender.
No, it's not name because what they were saying is that if somebody decides to be transgender, that you must call them what they say they are, what they say they are or feel they are. Now that is also compelled speech. So you're actually forcing someone to say something. And let's say this professor, he would actually say, well, that's not true because you can't have children. You don't have time of the month.
Yeah.
You've done certain surgery. I recognize that. If you want to call yourself Susan, I can call you Susan. But for you to tell me I must call you a woman, but you're, biologically, you're not. Yeah. So I'm interested to see how people feel about that, because that's usually really the elephant in the room, which usually, from what the debates I've seen, is really kicks things off and you get lots of verbal abuse. So yes. If you can answer that.
Yes. Well, for me, for transgender, they want to call themselves with a name or something. It's up to them to call themselves whatever they want. But my concern now, as a podcaster, as someone who has a voice, if you silence yourself in this kind of topics, if you don't raise your voice, if you don't silence the opposition, well, actually, you don't have to win the debate because there is no debate to win. There is nothing to win. So now also when we are trying to invite people to talk, no one wants to talk about this kind of topic because they don't want to offend people or they want to be respected. I feel you and understand you, but it is about telling what you are thinking about and speaking your truth and be authentic about your core values and what you are standing. So I think that should remind ourselves that it's not because it's a sensitive topic, we should not bring it. It's something that we need to talk about and not silencing because the opposition is different than us.
Okay, thanks.
We've got some more comments. Kishi Chad says, no, before that we had Anders. Anders said, it wasn't long ago when old people thought that every child that listened to heavy metal would become Satan worshippers. I think it's misleading to paint a picture where kids become transgender because they were influenced by some TV show. Yes, I agree with that. And there's some, if I made that not clear, it's some children have been influenced by TV shows and media, not all. Kishi Chad, gender does have a negative connotation as well. Be aware of that. And where are we? I think we've got more. Anders, again, I understand you, Victor, and I've grown up in a very conservative context, and it affected how we treated gay people and other people that were outside the norm. Sasha says, so if I consider myself a pink elephant, you have to recognize me as what I want, ? And Kishi Chad says, a pink elephant, that is dismissive and condescending. Nelson says, Howler is making a great point that a debate can be silenced before it even begins. Anders says, again, I recommend the film Boys Don't Cry. And Sasha says, Kishi Chad, no, just a surrealist argument. So okay. Sasha didn't mean that as an insult, just an example. Okay, back to you, Simon.
Thanks. Victor, can you answer that question? What we asked Hannah?
Can you just repeat the question?
Okay. The question is, compelled speech. Just because I say I'm a woman today, does that mean you must refer to me as she? if I change my name to Susan, that's one thing. But to make you false, compelled speech to say I'm a woman and physically I'm not. I cannot have children. I do not have natural breasts. I don't get a time of the month. How do you feel about that? What's your take on that?
That is eroding my freedom of speech. I would not say, I will not wake up tomorrow and say, oh, Matilda is a man. I will not address Matilda as Mr. because she feels she wants to be called Mr. I can say Matilda. If she changes her name, yes, I will call her whatever name she wants me to call her. But to actually use those pronouns, those Mr., Mrs., no, it's going to remain Miss or Mrs., and that's how I grew up. So I won't change it. But if it's a name, yeah, I will call her the name that she wants me to call her. But and how she presents it. But I will not. No, I will not.
Okay,
So
thanks for that. Carla, can we get back to these questions? These comments are still coming through.
Yeah, Kishi Chad says, people are not animals. You didn't land the point. Anders, just because I say you hurt me, do you have to listen? Kishi, if a trans woman is presenting and identifying as female, why does what is between their legs matter? And Anders, you can choose to try to understand and meet or belittle and ignore.
Okay. Matilda, over to you. Please don't ask me to repeat the question again.
Yeah, I would call her or him whatever they want. I mean, it's their life, it's their choice. I think they have to have the freedom to live the way that they want and express the way they want. It's not bothering me. It's not harming me physically. So what's the problem?
Okay.
The same way that I have the right to feel and express what I want, they have the right as well. They are humans as much as I am. And I need to teach that to my children as well. You have to treat everyone respectfully and with love. And you have to understand their journey. Their journey is a difficult journey. And me, if I consider myself an intellectual human being, I need to understand their pain. Otherwise, I will be like Trump.
Okay.
Or the Trump followers.
So if I considered myself a white man, would you refer to me as a white man?
Yeah, I can refer to you white man. It's
Okay,
that's what you want. I refer you a white man. Whatever
there's no
you
judgment
think
here.
that you know.
I was just trying to get an understanding.
And
So-
if you want me to call you a handsome man, I can refer to you as a handsome man. There is no judgment.
I'm gonna make Sasha jealous. Okay. Excuse me. I'm choking now. So over to you, Carla.
Yeah, I struggle with this one. I struggle in my mind to see the person as what they say they are. But I'm also a person that really tries in my life to treat people with love and respect as much as possible. And so I would deal with it in the most kind way that I could possibly do. And it would depend on what the agenda was, what the outcome was. If someone was trying to force me to say it for their agenda or for a particular outcome for them to prove a point, then I wouldn't. But if I was dealing with somebody and I felt that it was for the greater good of the situation, it was somehow going to help me to be compassionate and respectful and to reach that person as a human being, then I would be prepared to use whatever name or pronoun they were using. But it's not easy. That wouldn't be easy for me. I think it will take some time for me to come around to that because I see them in my mind as what I know they are. But if I don't know, then I don't know, because that's also an issue. Quite often we don't know. Nowadays, we do not always know if the person that's presenting in front of us is according to what they appear to be.
Okay, thanks. I'm just going to, on closing, furthermore, I want to thank everybody for the comments. The comments have been great. As a taxi driver, I'm going to give you a brief experience of what I had from my first transgender customer. It was nighttime. I didn't realize it was, well, I thought it was a woman. And long hair, like gothic down to the waist. had some kind of blouse, some jeans. I'm not sure if it's jeans or skirt or what. But it was nighttime. They went to pick. There's a big suitcase. I went to pick up the suitcase. I said, "Don't worry, love. I'll put it in the car for you." Being a gentleman, thinking she's a woman, and I put it in the car. As he walked round, or she walked round, or they, or have you, she's gone, "Oh, thank you," but it was a man's voice, strong man's voice. And I turned and I thought, "Oh, he's got a stubble as well." I said, "Okay, it's a man. I better apologize because it's a bit of an insult. You call a man a woman." So I went to apologize, and then he said, or she said, let's just say the person said, "No, I'm a woman. I've got breasts. I've had surgery." And I said, "Okay, let's stop there. I don't need to know all of that." And I got a complaint from the Uber company that I'm being harassed. I'm being not nice to somebody because they wanted to tell me how they, in my eyes, mutilated themselves. I didn't want to know. And I have a right not to know that. And at the end of the journey, I said, "Where do you want the suitcase? Is the location here?" And they said, I said, "Is there a location here, mate?" Figure of speech, a bit of an East London, Southeast London, no harm in it. They said, "Yeah." I got out the car, picked out the suitcase, put it on the floor. Then they said, "Please don't call me mate, love, he, she, nothing," kind of thing. I said, "Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to offend you." And then from there, every experience I've had with the transgender, they're just super sensitive. So if I identify a transgender, to keep the situation calm, I don't say anything. Now, I personally believe it shouldn't have to be to that point.
And that's awkward.
And it's confusing trying to make sure you use all these different terminologies, which I'm not accustomed to. I don't hate anybody. I have no need. I don't wish them to burn in hell or anything like that. But they're making life difficult for other people, and I don't understand it. If you've got an issue, fair enough, that's your issue. I've got my own issue. But you don't need to make life difficult. And this is my point. I get a lot of gay people in the car and we have a good old chat, no problem. But that behavior is not conducive to me and it doesn't work. And I don't know why. And I've had conversations with other people who say they're gay, but they're dating somebody who's non-pronoun and all these kind of things. And they try and explain it, but they get tripped up themselves. So what I'm saying, from the other side of things, you've got to also be considerate to what you're expecting people to change their whole lifestyle and their behavior. Yeah. Now, in saying that, we're all here to learn. I hope we've all had some insight into different people's angles at things. But I just wanted to let you as an audience know that. So I appreciate your comments. But there's two sides to every coin, and there's not just one victim, especially if you're telling other people what they should say all the time and to trying to change their lifestyle. But on closing, Victor, we're going to have quite a few comments.
Simon, before the comment, just maybe a one or two liner. See, we are here. See, it's not we against this. Bring out, let's have a conversation. Simple.
Mm-hmm.
And it is respect. I respect all human beings. I respect what decisions you make or you choose. I respect. But don't think because I do not understand what you're talking about or what you're going through means I'm dismissive of your experience. No, it's just that you've not made me to understand. If you make me understand, yes, we all go through different stuff. So respect is the name of the game.
Okay, Carla, do you want to read out the last comments, and then we're just going to go on closing of who's doing what podcast, and then we call it a day.
Okay, so Anders says you can choose to try to understand and meet or belittle and ignore. And bravo, I think, to a previous comment. Anders, handsome Simon, Kishi Chad, none of this is easy, and anyone who is attempting to understand and learn is respectful, but we have to treat people the way we want to be treated, period. Sasha says, Kishi Chad, I wanted to express the surrealist argument regarding the situation. It's not about to insult people, but in a discussion, you have to confront the arguments. Anders says some things that are outside our own framework of understanding. How should we meet those questions? And curiosity and compassion is better than the opposite. And you have the same effect on women, Simon. Kishi Jad, Sasha again, if a woman wants to be recognized as a man, as an individual, there are implications in the society, and it's more complicated than to have a simple individual status from someone. Kishi Chad says these things take time to learn and understand, but you have to be aware of your own biases and how you treat others. And Nelson says to Victor, it depends on how they make you understand. Back to you, Simon.
Okay, thanks. So rounding up, we're here every Monday, 7 p.m. British Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and 9 p.m. East African Time, mainly Kenya. Matilda, if you tell us who you are and what your podcast is, please.
My podcast is Coffee with Matilda, A Journey to Self, and you can find it on all podcast platforms, YouTube and Facebook. Over to you, Carla.
It's Carla or me? Okay, so my podcast is Women in Stories Podcast. You can find me on all podcast platforms and tune in for a new episode about ayahuasca journey. Also, let's go with Carla.
And my podcast is the Wonder and Wellbeing Podcast, which is for parents, teachers, and anyone who's interested in discussions around education and well-being of children. Over to you, Victor.
Yeah, thanks, Carla. I am Victor. I'm passionate. I am enthusiastic about entrepreneurship and the movement of the diaspora and the African diaspora. So to move into a lifestyle of freedom, I have a podcast called A Diaspora Entrepreneur. You can find on Spotify, on YouTube, all major platforms, including Google Podcast. Over to you, Simon.
Thank you. And I'm Simon. My podcast is Taxi Chronicles. I interview many people. I've got over 600 episodes as they tell their stories all about life and what they've gone through. I've even got some transgender, some LBQT stories as well that they tell themselves, so you can have a listen. And all our podcasts are on all the major platforms from Spotify, YouTube, Apple. So feel free to have a listen, and thank you for listening. I hope you liked the episode and you go away with a better feeling. And there's no offense given to anybody on this show or in the audience. And we're all here to learn and discuss and just air our views and come away and understand more. And we look forward to seeing you next Monday at 7 p.m. British Standard Time. Bye.